I texted the family group chat. My graduation's on Saturday. Hope you can make it. My sister replied, we'll be in Vegas, maybe next time. My dad added, don't make this about you. I simply wrote, understood. What they saw on the news that night made Vegas the last thing on their minds. I, 24M, watched my family choose Vegas over my medical school graduation. Then they saw what I'd really been planning. I sent the text at 9 a.m. on a Tuesday. The family group chat that usually stayed silent except for my mom's forwarded motivational quotes and my sister's vacation photos. I typed it out carefully, keeping my tone neutral. My graduation ceremony was scheduled for Saturday at 2 p.m., and I hoped they could make it. My phone buzzed within minutes. My sister responded first, saying they'd already booked a trip to Vegas for her husband's birthday, and maybe they could celebrate with me next time. Then my dad chimed in, telling me not to make this about myself, reminding me that the world didn't revolve around my schedule. My mom added a crying emoji and said she wished things had worked out differently. I stared at those messages for a long time. 8 years of medical school. 4 years of undergraduate biochemistry before that. Countless nights surviving on caffeine and 3 hours of sleep. I'd finished in the top 5% of my class. I'd secured a residency position at one of the most competitive hospitals in the country. And they were choosing Vegas. I typed back a single word, understood. Then I blocked out everything else and focused on what really mattered. The thing is, they didn't know about the other project I'd been working on for the past 2 years. The one that had nothing to do with medicine and everything to do with the investigative journalism minor I'd completed quietly on the side. The one that had consumed my few free hours, the early mornings before clinical rotations, the occasional weekend when I should have been sleeping. My brother-in-law ran a commercial real estate development company. My dad was his silent partner and primary investor. My sister managed their marketing and public relations. It was a family business in every sense, except they'd never once asked if I wanted to be involved. I was the one who went into medicine, the one who chose a different path, the one who apparently didn't understand how real business worked. What they didn't know was that I'd spent 2 years documenting every shady deal, every bribed inspector, every falsified safety report. I had emails. I had recordings from family dinners where they spoke freely, assuming I was too buried in my textbooks to pay attention. I had financial documents that my mom had left scattered around the house during my rare visits, never imagining I'd photograph them. I had everything. Saturday morning arrived with clear skies. I put on my suit and drove to the small coffee shop where I'd agreed to meet the investigative reporter from the major news network. She was younger than I expected, sharp-eyed and precise. I'd been corresponding with her for 3 months, feeding her information piece by piece, letting her verify everything independently. Today, I handed her the final folder. She asked if I was certain about this, if I understood what it would mean for my family. I told her I understood perfectly. She asked if there was any chance of reconciliation, if I'd considered the fallout. I told her I'd spent 8 years trying to earn their attention through achievement, and I was done trying. The story was scheduled to break at 6 p.m. Primetime news. They'd confirmed it would be their lead segment. I went to my graduation alone. The auditorium was packed with families, proud parents taking photos, younger siblings looking bored in uncomfortable clothes. I sat in my assigned seat in the alphabetical lineup and listened to names being called. When they announced mine and I walked across that stage, I looked out at the empty seats where my family should have been. I felt nothing but clarity. My phone started buzzing at 6:07 p.m. I was at a dinner I'd organized for myself at a nice restaurant downtown, finishing a steak I'd ordered without checking the price. The first call was from my sister, then my dad, then my mom, then my brother-in-law. I let them all go to voicemail. By 6:30, the texts started flooding in. My sister demanded to know what I'd done. My dad called me a traitor and threatened legal action. My mom begged me to explain what was happening. My brother-in-law's message was just a string of profanities. I finished my dinner slowly, ordered dessert, paid the bill. Then I went back to my apartment and turned on the news. There it was. My family's faces on national television. The reporter I'd met with laid it all out with devastating precision. The construction projects that had cut corners on safety regulations. The apartment building they developed in a low-income neighborhood where they'd bribed inspectors to overlook violations that had later resulted in a partial collapse. The environmental regulations they'd sidestepped. The contracts they'd won through connections and under-the-table payments rather than legitimate bids. 3 people had been injured in that building collapse. One seriously. The lawsuits had been settled quietly with NDAs. I'd tracked down 2 of the victims myself and connected them with the reporter. They were ready to go public now, with protection from the network's legal team. The news segment ran for 12 minutes. They'd done their homework. Every fact was bulletproof. My family's business wasn't just shady, it was dangerous. And now everyone knew. My phone rang continuously. I turned it off. Update 1. I waited 3 days before I turned my phone back on. The voicemail box was full. 97 text messages. 43 missed calls. I listened to none of the voicemails and read only the most recent texts to gauge the temperature. My dad's messages had evolved from rage to desperation. He claimed I'd destroyed the family, that I'd ruined innocent lives, that my mom was having panic attacks. My sister's texts were mostly angry, calling me vindictive and cruel, saying I'd done this because I was jealous of their success. My brother-in-law's messages were threatening legal action for defamation, though we both knew everything I provided was documented fact. My mom's messages were the hardest to read. She begged me to call her, said she didn't understand why I'd do this, asked what they'd done to make me hate them so much. I didn't hate them. I just stopped letting them treat me like I didn't matter. The news coverage had exploded. Local networks picked it up. National outlets were running follow-up investigations. The district attorney's office announced they were opening a formal inquiry. My brother-in-law's company had suspended operations pending investigation. Their investors were pulling out. The bank had frozen certain accounts. I went to work. I'd started my residency the Monday after graduation, diving into the brutal schedule of overnight shifts and endless rounds. The work was consuming and purposeful, and I was grateful for it. My colleagues didn't know about my connection to the news story. My last name was common enough that no one made the link immediately. 2 weeks after the story broke, my dad showed up at the hospital. Security called up to my floor, asking if I'd accept a visitor. I came down during my break and found him in the lobby, looking older than I remembered. He'd lost weight. His suit was wrinkled. He asked if we could talk somewhere private. I led him to a small consultation room used for delivering bad news to families. The irony wasn't lost on me. He sat down heavily and told me they were facing criminal charges. Multiple counts of fraud, bribery, and negligent endangerment. Their lawyers were expensive, and with the accounts frozen, they were struggling to pay them. He asked if I understood what I'd done to the family. I told him I understood exactly what I'd done. He tried a different approach then, appealing to family loyalty, reminding me of everything they'd done for me growing up, the sacrifices they'd made. I listened quietly and then asked him if he remembered my high school graduation. He looked confused. I reminded him that he'd missed it for a golf tournament. I asked if he remembered my college graduation. He'd been there, but left during the reception to take a business call. I asked if he remembered my white coat ceremony when I started medical school. He hadn't come at all. He said those things were different, that I was being petty, that comparing missed events to destroying their livelihood was insane. I told him I hadn't destroyed anything. I'd simply made sure that the truth was visible. They destroyed themselves by breaking laws and endangering people. I just held up the mirror. He stood up then, told me I was dead to him, that I'd made my choice and would have to live with it. He walked out without looking back. I went back to work and finished my shift. Update 2. The trial took 8 months to arrive. In that time, my family tried everything to reach me. My sister showed up at the hospital twice before I had her officially barred from the premises. My mom sent letters to my apartment, long rambling explanations of how desperate things had become, how they might lose everything. How could I just stand by and watch? I didn't stand by. I continued cooperating with prosecutors. They had most of what they needed from my initial disclosure, but there were details to clarify, testimonies to give. I spent 2 full days being deposed. My family's lawyers tried to paint me as a vindictive son seeking revenge for perceived slights, but the evidence spoke for itself. The prosecutors offered plea deals. My brother-in-law refused initially, confident his lawyers would find a way out. My dad was ready to take a deal until my brother-in-law convinced him to hold out. My sister wasn't facing criminal charges directly, just civil liability as an officer of the company. My mom wasn't charged at all. She'd never been officially involved in the business. 3 months before trial, one of the victims from the building collapse died. She'd been in declining health since her injuries, and while the direct cause was heart failure, her family made it clear that the complications from the collapse had accelerated her decline. The prosecutors added negligent homicide to the charges. That changed everything. My brother-in-law took a plea deal the following week. He agreed to testify against my dad in exchange for a reduced sentence. My dad, backed into a corner, had no choice but to take his own plea. They both faced prison time, though less than if they'd gone to trial and been convicted on all counts. My sister called me from a number I didn't recognize, getting through my defenses. She was crying, asking how I could do this to them, how I could live with myself knowing our dad was going to prison. She said I'd killed that woman as surely as they had, because if I'd just talked to them privately instead of going to the media, they could have made things right. I asked her if they would have actually made things right. If I'd come to them with evidence of what they'd done, would they have voluntarily reported themselves? Would they have compensated victims? Would they have fixed the safety issues in their other buildings? She went quiet. I asked her if she remembered my graduation. She said she remembered that I'd blown it out of proportion, that it was just one day, that Vegas had already been booked. I told her it had never been about one day. It was about a lifetime of being invisible to them unless I was useful or convenient. It was about watching them build something together while making it clear I wasn't welcome in their world because I'd chosen differently. It was about them assuming I wouldn't notice, wouldn't care, wouldn't act. She called me selfish and hung up. Update 3. My brother-in-law served 14 months. My dad served 22. They were both released early for good behavior. By the time they got out, I'd completed my residency and accepted a position at a hospital across the country. I'd made it clear through legal channels that I wanted no contact with any of them. My mom kept trying anyway. She'd gotten my new address somehow and sent cards on holidays. Brief notes about how the family was healing, how my dad was doing better, how my sister had found a new job in marketing for a legitimate company. She never directly asked me to reconcile, but the implication was always there. The last card arrived on my 30th birthday. Inside, she'd written that she'd finally understood why I'd done what I'd done, that she was sorry they'd made me feel invisible, that she hoped someday I could forgive them even if I never wanted to see them again. I didn't respond, but I kept the card. 5 years after the story broke, I received an email from the family of the woman who'd died. They'd tracked me down through the prosecutor's office. They wanted to thank me. Because of my disclosure and the subsequent investigation, they'd been able to pursue wrongful death claims successfully. More importantly, the investigation had forced inspections of dozens of other buildings in the area, identifying and fixing violations that could have caused more collapses, more injuries, more deaths. I probably saved lives by speaking up. That email confirmed it. I've thought a lot about whether I'd do it differently if I could go back. If I'd try one more time to talk to them, to make them see me, to earn their respect through something other than exposure and consequences. I don't think I would change anything. Some people only understand accountability when it arrives with force. Some families are only capable of seeing you clearly when they can no longer take you for granted. I'm not close with my family now. I probably never will be. My mom and I exchange occasional emails, surface-level updates about life and work. My sister sent a friend request on social media last year that I didn't accept. My dad hasn't attempted contact since that conversation in the hospital consultation room. But I built something they can never touch. A career that matters, a life that's entirely mine, a sense of self-worth that doesn't depend on their validation. I help people every day. I'm respected by my colleagues. I have friends who show up when it matters. My graduation ceremony happened in an auditorium where my seat was empty. But I walked across that stage alone, and I've walked forward every day since then with absolute certainty that I made the right choice. They chose Vegas. I chose truth. I'd make that choice again every single time. Thank you for watching. If you enjoyed this story, please hit that subscribe button. Don't forget to give it a thumbs up and share it with friends or family who might enjoy it too. Your support means a lot to us.